Hello and welcome back. Let's make the German economy great again. Here to discuss this is François Savary, CIO of Genville Wealth Management in Geneva. François, hello.
Hello, Mark.
Thank you for joining us. It's nice to see you again. You know, the traffic light government in Germany collapsed, as was expected a couple of weeks ago. This is piling even more pressure onto the German economy. But what is happening in Germany? Why is the German economy so weak?
Because they made the wrong mistake and they tried to develop the wrong model of over the last 15 years. You know, at the end of the day, what was the great model of the German economic power? It was to be an exporter, to benefit from cheap energy prices coming from Russia, and to export a lot of their goods and services to China. At the end of the day, this model collapsed with the crisis, first of all with the COVID, second with the crisis in Ukraine. And this is the reason why there is so many problems in the German economy right now. And that is something that is very, very important because they need to rethink the way they want to build a model in the future. The first thing, you know, Germany is a coalition system. You always need to have a coalition in order to be able to rule the country. It's very rare that a single party is able to rule the country. So currently, when you look at the polls, the CDU-CSU, which is the Conservative Party of Germany, is leading the polls above 30% of the vote. Then what kind of coalition will emerge from that? It's going to be very interesting. That's the first step that you need to go through. And maybe there will be a coalition between the Socialists and the CDU again, because the Ecologic Party is going down. You have the Extreme Party going up. So that's the first step that you need to go through. What is very interesting is that Mr. Merz, who is currently the leader of the CDU, said over the last few days that it was open to the idea that we need to reform the fiscal brake. I think this is a very important measure, because this is one of the key elements that has led also to the very slow growth that you had in Germany in the course of the last few years, because at the end of the day, the Liberal Party was absolutely against the idea that you need to suspend this fiscal brake longer. So I think maybe there is an opportunity there for a change of course on this issue.
To what extent the slowdown in the German economy is affecting the rest of the European countries?
Significantly. This is the first economy of Europe. So it means that for us, for European countries, it's very, very important then that you have quite a solid growth in Germany. So what is going to happen in this country in the course of the next few years economically is going to be significant for European countries. Yes, it is.
Therefore, if Germany rolls back or reforms the budget deficit brake mechanism, how much do they need to add to their debt in order to stimulate the German economy? And will that have a major effect on the rest of Europe?
Okay, it's not necessarily a question of number. This is a question of why do you have a deficit? You know, you need to be flexible with the issue of deficit. If you do deficit because you spend unwisely and you try to give subsidies to people and etc., this is stupid. If you decide that you need to have some deficit because you need to have investment in order to be able to be in the current world where you have the Chinese, where you have the US going for tariffs and etc. If this is a deficit that is helping to support innovation, investment for the future, this is a good deficit. So it's more a question of how do you make the deficit, for what purpose, than the number that you need to have in mind.
Do you think what's happening in the German economy, do you think that's a tailwind of the Angela Merkel legacy, and why, if you do?
I believe so. I believe, as I said, this model was developed in the course of the last 15 years, this model of export-oriented growth with low energy prices and etc. is something that was developed in the course of the last 15 years. And this is the responsibility, at least partially, and partially does not mean 1%, it means more than that. It's partially the decision of Angela Merkel, which are weighing on the economy. I think that Angela Merkel was not a visionary person. She was a manager. She thought that it was the right thing to do at the time. Events that happened in 2020, and especially in 22, proved that it was completely wrong.
Do you think manufacturing has been so badly affected by the increase in energy prices in Germany?
Oh, yes, it has been very, very significant because they were very dependent on very low energy prices. They were importing a lot of their energy from Russia. Remember that one of the key issues that happened at the beginning of the war in Ukraine was the issue of the connection, the opening of a connection, a second connection between Russia and Germany for the transport of gas in the gazoduct into Germany. And this was something that was developed in the course of the last 15 years and even before, because remember that Mr. Schröder, who is also partially responsible for the situation, was very, very keen in promoting the fact that Germany needed to depend on Russian oil and gas because it was a cheap way to get access to energy, and that it was very supportive for the German manufacturing.
Brussels obviously has a part to play in Europe's largest economy and its biggest exporter by far. Do you think Brussels will intervene with creative measures? And what do you think those could be?
Okay, very interestingly, lately we had the famous Draghi report. This is the report which is giving some clues about how the European economy should evolve in order to be able to sustain the economic quote unquote war that European countries are facing, first from China, second from the United States with the policy of tariffs that is going to be implemented in the coming months. So the Draghi report is very important. It's all about innovation. It's all about investment. It's all about where does Europe has a chance to compete and to be able to develop an economy that is based on sectors in which money needs to be thrown in order to support the development over time of competitiveness on those sectors. So I think, yes, Brussels has something to do, and the Draghi report is currently being discussed at the European Commission, and I think it's very important. Short term, the development that we experience in Germany are negative for the Draghi report because it means that Europeans are not going to be able to discuss at length this report until the result of the election. But if the future coalition emerge and understands that the Draghi report is key and that a combination of power between the countries and the fact that the European Union needs to have the ability to have common debt in the future, I think this is a key development for the German economy in the medium term.
So we could call this like a 5-year plan. Have they proposed which sectors they see as important in the future?
You still have, first of all, you still have the issue of AI, where European countries are lagging. There is the issue of everything that relates to the ecology, to durability, and those factors that are going to be a very important element for European. And this is a point where Draghi is putting a lot of pressure. There is also the issue of red tapes. You need to reduce red tapes in Europe. There is a lot of saving that you could do on that front. You need to give the ability for the countries and for the companies to have the ability to be more competitive in the global environment, to have less regulation. So you need to rethink about different elements. It's a combination of investment and deregulation in a way.
Coming back to Germany now, where are its future profitable export markets?
I think that they do not yet exist. And that's the big thing, because, you could say that, okay, defense industry can become something very significant for Germany. I have doubts about that. Even if the Germans have decided that they want to grow their spending in connection with the development in Ukraine, and that they have realized that they need to spend those 2% of GDP on defense. The defense is one aspect, but it's not enough. You cannot create a manufacturing economy. So they need to regain some strength on the automobile industry, and that's something that they are trying to do again with the support of Brussels. Remember that the Europeans have decided to put some tariff on Chinese electrical vehicle lately, and this is something that they could do. But it's also the development of Europe. They can rebuild, to my point of view, the manufacturing industry in Germany needs to focus much more on the European Union and less on the external world per se, China or the US, they really need to find a way to support higher growth in Europe to support the manufacturing industry.
Coming back to what you just said, you compared defence to car manufacturing. Do you believe to any extent that ramping up expenditure on defence and also increasing manufacturing of defence equipment for export, do you think to any extent that can replace the car industry, which is 20% of their exports?
No, it can't. It can't. It's not feasible. But there is something also that we should never forget. Per se, defense is not necessarily a good thing, but defense also involves innovation. The ability of the military spending to develop innovation that can translate into the economy in the future, the civil economy, if you want, is always something that could be interesting. But to be clear, no, the defense industry, the German defense industry cannot substitute for the car industry in Germany. It's impossible.
Lastly, what are the German numbers that we can expect in the future that can give some indication of what's happening in the German economy?
From there, Germany has gone through a kind of recession over the last few quarters. We expect some numbers coming on Friday on the GDP for the third quarter, 0.2%. It tells you that the German economy is between recession and stagnation. It's not something that is very good for Europe, first of all. What can you expect? What would be good for Europe is an acceleration of those numbers. When you look at the latest forecast from the IMF and the OECD, clearly they set a trend for renewed growth in Germany in 2025, going above 1%, 1.5% possibly. So that's the kind of number that you want to see. But for the time being, it is not enough. You need to have more than 1.5 rate of growth in Germany to really get this engine of growth in Europe alive again.
Francois, thank you very much. I think that's all we've got time for. I look forward to catching up with you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.